Welcome to another episode of Feed the Trolls. Mauisnake is joining Thorin and I today, and we're actually saying off air the last time all three of us were together, I got invited to Snake and Banter. I had only just sort of started my CS career, and I was absolutely terrified. I'm a little bit terrified today because normally before these episodes, I have a really good plan. I like to kind of set it up that we paint a picture really nicely. We start with lots of big questions, dive down into the topic at hand. I can't do that today because the more notes I made, the more I realized that this is just one giant hot mess. We are talking about Furia today, and I don't even know where to start. Thorin, what the hell is going on here?
Sure. I mean, the other joke is basically this is where, Maui just actually does, despite his pleading on Twitter and stream, have a hate boner for Brazilian / Furia, because he even went out of his way on the last Snake and Banter to just crowbar a point in there about the Kai guy, who I think he also did on another show before that. So it's like, listen, he could fill 2 hours just by himself at this point in time. So what I would say is this: I actually think the most cool thing about that sort of tell-all stream that Art did is we're not crazy. We were just being gaslit for all these years. We were all told, it's a family environment. No one would ever want to leave. No, we signed all those long contracts. No, what it turns out is there's been a pressure cooker inside the team as well. And quite frankly, I get the sense with the mixture of these big moves they've done, the fact KSCERATO won't leave, but then people look really sad, etc. I get the sense they themselves know it's all sort of spiraling out of control. And I'll even go ahead and say my speculation that I had on some of my recent shows is I get the sense maybe they can't sign top players anymore. The real irony, I told Maui on Snake and Banter, is this is the position that MIBR with Fallen used to be in when Furia came along, which is they wanted to sign KSCERATO and Yuri and just bring over the top players and build a new dynasty themselves. But they found out that in Brazilian Counter-Strike, based on some weird precedent of what they do in football, apparently, where it's you make the contract buyouts a certain size so the small teams don't just get all the talent taken away. It's really hard to sign the up-and-comers once they're already kind of proven. So even though when we're watching the tournaments, you see people on MIBR, the Insane guy, Big as Zero on Pin, they look like an obvious slam dunk to just walk in. If this was 5 years ago, you just say, hey, do you want to come to us? We're the bigger team. But right now, it seems like Furia's they've completely painted themselves in a corner, as far as I can tell. If they didn't have KSCERATO, if he didn't stay loyal, I don't know what they'd have. The joke would be if he left, then you don't even need to rebuild Furia. It's just over, basically. The joke is, last one out, shut the door and turn the lights out. The old fucking joke.
I mean, Maui, this is your opportunity. I was watching your stream earlier, and you can respond to Thorin, but also, I mean, I know you were talking about your Kai emotes. I actually might get those designed for you.
He's got emotes for the guy just to hit on him. Okay, right, okay.
It's when you type !Kai in chat, it just says the Nightbot just says yourself. Put 1 and 2 together.
Okay. Reasonable.
Unkai yourself. Unkai yourself. I mean, the state that Furia is in is just utterly depressing, because it's an organization that obviously is supposed to be the top dog in Brazil as of the departure of LGSK. And all in all, they haven't really accomplished anything. The best they've done is winning a DreamHack Open, or I guess if you want to count at least a Masters, I suppose those are pretty much the same in terms of prestige for everybody out there. And a guy that's been a perennial top 20 player in KSCERATO has practically now wasted his entire prime by moving through this clown fiesta of a team, which was, maybe it wasn't just art. It felt like it was art to most of us at before. It felt like it was Gary, but now that art had revealed everything, that it almost kind of feels it's a little bit reminiscent of how Nafany said, people were telling me to do things. I'm going to say this, Art. You are not, you made that style yourself. You took all the credit for that kind of calling. Everybody loved you for that style of play. So you can say that there were little things outside the server that maybe hindered your guys' ability to perform well. Yes, it did sound like them dropping Henny was a huge oversight by the organization themselves, but you still wanted to call that style. You were still buying an MP9 on round number 2 when your entire team was saving for USPs, and then the first gun round, you have to fight outside yard on nuke with an MP9, which makes no sense. That makes no sense. Why are you throwing away a round for your team? Why are you throwing away a position for your team because you think you can get a cheeky kill? It's like watching Art was like watching your matchmaking friend who has no concept of what tier 1 Counter-Strike looks like, and he just came from Call of Duty. He wants to buy every single round, and he's just going to use whatever he can, and just if he's like, oh, what, saving is a foreign concept to not only my friend in matchmaking, it's a foreign concept to Art, and it shouldn't be a foreign concept to a tier 1 professional player. So beyond that, I also just think that, yeah, in what everything art has revealed, it's shown that there is incompetency above his head. It is actually systemic, the problems that this org is having, that this team is having. And it's all hindering KSCERATO, one of the best riflers in the world, and also the potential of Yuri. And I think many people have been down on Yuri because he's had a bit of a drop in performance. By the way, his top 20 was when it was online farming North American competition. Like, I don't really ever know if I truly believe that Yuri was a top 18 player in the world. To me, he was more like top 30, but he got to farm NA competition in that 2020 period. And he was always just a right-hand man to KSCERATO, who was the bona fide closer and superstar of this team. And now the team's structure is not good. And so Art going away, they're seemingly in a transition period with Fallen. And beyond that, they're just wasting more time. I think that's my biggest complaint about Furia today. They are wasting our time, they're wasting KSCERATO's time, and they're wasting their own fans' time. Like, people are directing so much hatred towards me and other people that just are like, why are they getting Kai? And so people are like, it's almost like there's a red herring that somehow Furia threw this out to all their fans and to basically all of Brazil, where they're saying, no, guys, hate Mauisnake, hate Thorin, hate all these people that are saying that Kai sucks. No, it's not our fault. It's their fault. It's their fault. Like, first of all, Kai isn't reading my tweets. Kai doesn't care what I say on my stream to a few hundred people. He doesn't care about this stuff. He's being thrown into a position that is absolutely well out of his element. He's out of his depth completely, and it's KSCERATO, it's ruining KSCERATO's career, and it's also Furia, who are then able to just kind of scapegoat this guy. Like, this is the best position if you're Fallen, pretty much. It's the best position if you're Furia's general management, that you throw this guy in here, say our hands are tied, we want to see what Kai is capable of. If you watched a single demo of Kai, even Kai's best performance in 2024, you knew he never had a chance doing anything at ESL Pro League. Even when he farms domestic Brazilian opposition, you see that he does it by just them getting caught off guard completely. The dude doesn't jiggle peak angles. He doesn't even get set up with good utility. It's just like sometimes his crosshair will move onto their head by chance, which is basically like he's death matching through the server. He was never going to stand a chance. It was just a flat out waste of everybody's time. And I need Furia to pull the trigger on a big roster move, because that is one of Art's most salient complaints. The fact that he said that they were not actually ever going to acquire anybody that the team wanted, that is what pissed me off the most about Furia, and I still see that it's happening today.
I mean,
tell us how you really feel.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love the Kai rant reminded me of that old man shouting at the cloud. And I feel like there's going to be a lot more of those. But I am curious, do you think that there's a situation where the management, Thorin, is just not going to get people that work? And you can see already, because I saw an interview with Fallen as well, not just in terms of how they're going to build the team, but like everyone has different opinions. There's the coaching conversation going on now. So you've got the owners of Furia saying we need an international coach. You have Fallen doing an interview going, well, it's probably not a good idea because, you know, we don't all speak English and that's going to be a problem. And I'm going, they're doing these on interviews live. They're agreeing that they're all disagreeing. How is that happening?
I mean, I will say it is rich, because even though you are obviously famously a Fallen fangirl, listen, a lot of us used to be back in the day. I will say it, like Maui says, if you're Fallen, like at this point, it's not like in the server you can just smash everyone's head off. So what you got to do is you got to be a politician. You got to throw a lot of like fodder out there for the crowd. Like he says, just chum for the Sharks, right? You've just got to get everyone else kind of mad about other stuff. Like, no, maybe they're messing around with the coach and what's going on with the org. Exactly. Yeah, right, Fallen. What is going on with the Furia org, mate? You know, when I said before about how it's impossible to get people, the buyouts are insane. Doesn't help if you spend $700,000 on somebody who used to be a HLTV top 20 player almost 10 years ago, like the better part of 10 years ago. Like, that is a million miles done. So there's two of the craziest parts. Like, I agree with Maui. Like, first of all, we didn't even know that anyone was a thing. Everyone just assumed, because they literally leaned on this angle, which is that preconception of like, oh, he's got that weird thing where he's just not quite driven enough, you know, and he wants to play with his brother and all that. And it actually turns out he didn't. He was totally fine playing in the team. He was really good, by the way, at the time. Like, he was low-key like the best AWPer they've ever had in this team. He really worked. And they just cut him because he was partying too much or whatever. Even though I can tell you, you never would have seen it in the game. He looked really good. I've never recorded recovered from that Furia lineup. That was the Furia lineup that was supposed to go into like the offline era and be really good. And I have to say, look, they probably wouldn't win the major, but they'd have been a real dark horse. Like they would have all the positions pretty much covered. So yeah, instead you cut Henny, and then a few years later, like, bro, you cut him in 2020 or 2021 or whatever, and then you're bringing Fallen in like 2 years later. Like, this is mental. Like, that's an example of like what the management has done. That's like some sort of meme of like, well, like, we need an AWPer like Fallen used to be back in Luminosity. I've got you Fallen. It's like, I said back in Luminosity. Like, not now. Like, it's too late now, isn't it? Like, that would be like me saying, oh, I need a player to play for Liverpool in midfield like Zidane. And you actually get Zidane, who's like 50 years old now. It's like, well, that's not, I didn't mean literally, did I? So that's just kind of like, that typifies what they've done. I know one of the things that Maui often complains about is, why did they ever bring Chelo over from Imperial with Fallen? Like, that also never made any sense, because they were basically setting him up in their team at the end to be the best player, if you didn't know. Because Fur was kind of on the outs and Fallen was definitely not at his best. They kind of just played around all of Chelo's strengths. Then in this team, they were like, you're the new Taco. And it's like, am I? Like, haven't I just spent all these years not doing that? So what's bizarre is even when they sign talent, it's like not put into the right role. Then when they cut people, they're the good players they're cutting. And then they bring in Fallen, who at this point in time, maybe as an IGL, he's all right. That's about it. And then for 700k, you just think to yourself, if someone tells me now, like if they tell me at this moment I don't have money for transfers, okay, I get it, to be fair. Like, you're not really a top team anymore. But if I knew you had the 700k, I bet that goes a long way to getting in Insani or a bigger Zero. That's probably, that might just be the buyout. The joke is that might be the buyout for like 1.5 for them. That's not even that bad. So it's kind of sad across the board. Like, you look, this has to be management related, because apparently the players weren't making the team. Apparently they really, that's also one thing that I will say is dodgy though, is players will give the perception that they're really cool with it, and they'll say like, you've got this family bond and we're all loving it. Well, then at least here's what I'll tell you. If you're a player, you don't have to disrespect your org publicly. Reach out to a journalist or someone on a talk show. Like, we can put that point out there for you, or we can speculate on it or something. We can sort of get the juices going, as it were. So sadly, they just kept stum. Like, no one knew this outside of the Brazilian scene. In fact, quite frankly, I've never even heard it leaked from like a Gaules type clip or something. So this just seems like that's the other craziest thing. And then lastly, I have to say, the worst thing I agree with Maui is, you can just take the Odyssey G2 angle here. What you have to do in all these teams is ask from each person's perspective, like, is this a good team for them? For Foreign, it's the best team he could be on, pretty much. There's no one better than this going to pick him up. If you're Chelo, look, if you had the better roles, it's probably a pretty good team. If you're Kai, obviously the joke is you should never even be on this team. If you're Yuri, I don't really know. I actually feel like at this point in time, I might even give him like I won't give him a total pass, but I'll say he can have one of his like 3 lives back before he gets eliminated from the game, as it were. Because maybe it's a messed up situation. Maybe his coaching setup was bad. Maybe the agile setup. The art one, I do think he ran his own career into the ground on that one. That's actually why the Henny kick is so tragic, because the art that was playing in 2020, he was really interested in 2019. He peaked in 2020. He used to be amazing at that style, and they had everything cooking. But it's KSCERATO that's the killer. KSCERATO is so overqualified for this team now, it is ridiculous. And he's in that scenario, just like Monacy is at a higher scale that I hate, where it's like you have to drop the 28 bomb to win a game like 13-11. It's like, bro, that's supposed to be me just winning like the MVP of the tournament, not like barely hanging on. Because what I always think to that guy is, what happens in the game where you just get the 23 kills? What, you just lose and then turn to everyone else and go, well, win as a team, lose as a team? Like, yeah, well, I bet you do, exactly.
I mean, why do you think that this is, I mean, Mario, I jump into this. There's still so many things I want to talk about, but the KSCERATO angle, because Thorin's brought it up, he had the chance to leave. He's choosing to stay. That's what he said. He wants to stay. Why? Why? You're so good. Why are you staying?
There's no good reason in terms of the future competitiveness of his career. Like, if he cares about things like legacy in terms of his individual accolades and achievements, he would have left by now. But there's a couple things where for him, for anybody that's playing in Brazil, it does feel like Furia is the pinnacle of being at the top of the food chain in that region. And so there is a slight empathy, because I feel like I see people like Tabson, and he kind of did a similar thing for his career. He wanted to raise up the German space, and so he signed a long-term deal to Big. There were definitely offers on the table. I've heard stuff floating around like G2 and maybe some other teams that were kind of just ones that could have made a blockbuster signing with him, and they just want to commit to their region. And to me, I do, in some ways I do understand it. You do want to see your fellow countrymen rise up with you, but I mean, hey, to pursue this job and to do Counter-Strike analysis, I thought moving to London was my best move. So you see how quickly I moved. Like I was comfortable moving to Europe because I knew that's where I would get the most action, and it panned out for me in the time that I was there, definitely without a doubt. And so if I were in his position, I would have left. I was in a similar position. I did leave. So if I'm KSCERATO now, the Liquid team, like, it's just so disappointing because you see that Yukindar could play better, but oh my god, if KSCERATO were in those positions that Skulls was in, that team would be on fire. I think they would have won something by now, because you can take your pick for who you think is the worst player on that team, but it's clear as daylight that Yukindar and Skulls could both be playing a considerable margin better. And if it's just 1-for-1, the spots fit perfectly. And for me, I feel like the only other thing is maybe he was a little bit concerned about playing and speaking in English and calming in English, because if he always spoke in Portuguese, sure, there's going to be a little bit of brain delay there, and that could really slow you down as a player. We saw that happen to Zywoo. He recovered, though, within, say, 3-4 months, but KSCERATO, he would have had to go through those growing pains. But the thing is that, like, having talked to KSCERATO before, having heard him in post-game interviews, the dude can speak English fine. Like, if he's playing it in the Counter-Strike level, maybe he's a little bit slower with some of the calls, but those are things that, with repetition, you do get adjusted to. We've seen that everybody, it's very rare for a player to go through half a year and just still say that the main source of their issues is communication. I think the rare example was that it took Brolin maybe over a year to get used to English because he was coming in super fresh off of speaking Swedish for his entire life. But like at this point, I know that KSCERATO speaks English probably even better. When I hear him in interviews speaking English, I'm hearing him say more complex sentences than I've ever heard Brolin say. So I'm pretty sure he could handle that at this point in time. So I don't know. It's just one of those things where you hold this high regard for an organization, and in some way, I just feel like I feel like there's some kind of manipulative tactics. Like if I really have to go into it, I'm not gonna like go too far in it, but I feel like they probably said something to him, like sold it like we're a family, we're a team, like we ride together, we die together, and stuff like that. And I feel like KSCERATO has just he's drank the Kool-Aid at this point. He's been chugging it.
By the way, the other thing as well is like what people have to remember, those infamous, notorious 5-year contracts were signed in like the summer of 2019. So actually, in theory, his contract might be running out soon. This might just be the last spell. And I'll say this, here's the part people haven't thought through, is because of the rise of people like Insani, he drops actually pretty good on MIBR too. The exit guy's not bad. At this point in time, you don't even have to go to an international team, mate. Just go to MIBR. It's a real org with money. If you go there, like you've already got people who have firepower around you. The joke is you'd instantly be the best team in Brazil. Like Furia would just be off with the scraps. I don't even know what they do. Because if they really can't sign the biggest heroes in the world, by the way, then who are they getting in this spot? Another Kai, another person from the academy? Like if you're KSCERATO, that's the one hope I guess I'm holding out for, is at least it's not like he came back and then like signed a 2-year contract or something. As far as we know, it probably is running out soon. So that's my one hope, is like, look, to be fair, mate, there's enough talent out there. If you just go and join the talent, that's already a really good team. Like that team right there could be top 10.
So this is the thing, though. Do you also think that it's maybe a situation with Furia now where they're stuck with what they have because they spend so much money on Fallen? Like I think that's why Kai could potentially be in the mix, is like the cash is gone. Like there's nothing left now. You've blown it all. So you're kind of stuck with what you've got. Obviously those players like a KSCERATO, their contract must be coming up now, but at the moment, you've got him tied in, so you kind of just stick with what you've got, Thorin, and hope that it works. Kai comes up from your academy because you have no more money left because Fallen, the golden child, is now in the team.
One thing I hate about esports in general is because it's young men, people almost take this view where they act like it's not professional sports. It's like being at school and you're going to like learn the role. And once you get some experience, you're going to like really, it's like, it's sports. Like you don't just sign a player in this scenario, in the analogy of being sports versus like, it doesn't matter if the player's 19, he's played like in different teams for 3 or 4 years in certain cases, right? So the person isn't going to do like a 100% level raise in a year, 6 months. I mean, quite frankly, by the way, players almost never do that. Like, in my opinion, actually, once you played a year or two, like some of the core of this team has, you're just a known quantity. And obviously, it goes without saying, barring like, I mean, I almost can't even think of anyone who ever actually did a real career dip all the way down and then ever came back up. I don't think it's ever happened. Like, I think you'd have to pick someone where the joke would be, in theory, it'd have to be someone who did go to IGL, then went off IGL. But the reason that doesn't work for Fallen is he went off IGL himself and he couldn't get his level up again. So I just don't buy that. Like, essentially, it doesn't matter what you replace Gary, bring in any coach you want, bring fucking Zonic in there, have him speak with a Portuguese translator. It wouldn't matter. Like, there's nothing he could do to these players to level them up. So it's like I say, for me at the moment, KSCERATO is basically just sort of like pulling you out of the fire every now and then. And by the way, you spend half your time in the fire. Just look at Pro League. Like, that was absolutely disgraceful. It's been ages since this team was relevant. Like, they were never going to do anything this major, by the way. Pretty much everyone I saw just bet against them 24/7. You know what? There wasn't any. This team, I tell you, the person who was the canary in the coal mine for this team, it's actually Launders. Launders used to be an insane stand for some of these guys in this team. He loved them. And all you need to know is he made probably one of his best videos ever, had the least amount of filler ever, and least amount of trying to be like down with the kids, fucking Gen Alpha lingo. And it was like a real one called like the downfall of Furia. And you could tell he was like heartbroken in this, realize that it's all just coming collapsing down. So yeah, at this point in time, like I don't know what they have. All they have is KSCERATO and sort of like the goodwill of some of the fans. And by the way, that art tell-all killed the goodwill. That at this point, you don't even get that thing. That's why the joke is, of course, you have to attack Mauisnake, because you can't actually address the problems in the team anymore. It's really sad. It's a bummer if you're a fan of those teams, you know.
Maui's keeping very quiet. I mean, Maui, do you think that it's a similar situation? Is it a matter of Furia's just they've blown all their cash and now they're hoping that miraculously, like a Fallen, will stand up and just quickly improve?
I think of the roster moves that this team did in the last 3-4 years, and I feel like their biggest acquisition ever had to have been Fallen. The second biggest was Safe, and everyone else beyond that.
Oh, sure. Everyone forgot that one, yeah.
Yeah, because he didn't really pan out all too well. I feel like they didn't really use him that well as an opper, and I feel like that was what was so special about Henny, and that's why we really liked watching him on that team, because he's a guy that doesn't really need to go for opening picks. Like Henny himself, his whole career has been kind of similar to what Brokey is today, where he was kind of a loose cannon, but he would do it in mid-late rounds more often than he would actually just try to impose himself. And that was kind of a foreign concept to Safe. And I think in some ways it was probably a little bit of a foreign concept to Fallen. Like, he wasn't used to, he wanted to be a little bit more in the action too himself. And I'm not saying like Fallen's going to hit every shot or what he is what he was in 2016-17, but I do think that the way that Furia and mostly Art, the Furia Art Gary combo, is that they thought rounds need to be started with Art, and then people will fill in the space behind him, and then they can do whatever it is based off of the mid round or the information that Art gives them. And it's usually just information, by the way. It's not usually actually a kill anymore since 2020 and his peak. After he fell off, it's just like you're playing 4v5 with a modicum of information, which is usually just they might be in a default. I might have spotted two, but who knows? Yeah. So it was pretty disappointing for basically every opper since Henny, because he's the only one that just is cool with playing with his back against the wall the whole time. And now when I think about the money and the finances,
by the way, just quickly as well, that's something I hadn't even thought of, Maui. If you also look at Safe before Furia and after, he's just a way better player. Like, it just looks like they also wasted him. Like, they didn't even give him the fucking platform from which to perform. Like, no. The guy clearly has skills.
Yeah, when talking about Safe, I mean, on MIBR, they just won that ESL Challenger Melbourne event. I saw a little bit of it. I mean, Insani blew everybody away in that one, but Safe looked like he belonged. He definitely looked like he was at least satisfying his role on that one. And even, I mean, I honestly think Fallen looked better on Imperial too than he looked on this Furia team. Sure. So yeah, it's like every opper falls off when they join this team. It's kind of like the Liquid effect, how it seems like they really just prioritize their riflers over anything else. But that's a conversation for another day. In terms of the money, I do feel like the $700,000 buyout for Fallen was a lot, and it was excessive, and it was something that Furia knew that they were going to have to live with, and they just somehow thought it was going to work out. And also, by the way, they acquired Chelo. That's an acquisition too. I don't know how much that was, but I think the two of them probably, near the $1 million range. And so they are probably a little bit strapped for cash at this point. I'm curious how much, like, they should have some money in terms of the sticker money from Paris, the sticker money from the most recent major, but I don't know how these funds are being allocated. And I have to guess, I just, from everything that Art said, I doubt they're all going into the best places and they're funding the right people and funding just the winningness of the team. So yeah, maybe money is a bit of an issue, but I also, from our expose, know that Furia, when they do have the money, they just take too long to pull the trigger. That's why they took so long to even get a Fallen and Chelo. It's why they didn't get anybody that was an explosive rifler. Instead, they just kind of got Honda and they got dropped. Like, they weren't getting the pieces that Furia wanted or anybody wanted. Like think about it like this: when Henny left, by the way, he was replaced by Junior immediately. But then think of who Junior was replaced by. He was replaced by Honda. Why are you replacing an Opper who clearly didn't work out for your team? You want another Opper, right? No, they got Honda. What? And then Honda played for nearly a year. I still don't understand that. Like, why don't you have an Opper? But wait a second. Okay, you get rid of Honda. Who do you want now? Don't you want an Opper again instead of just kind of watching Art use the weapon? No, they got dropped for nearly 2 years. It's like, wait, we're going for 2.5 years now without a serious Opera?
And remember, Art became the Opera at one point in time, even though it's like the most inappropriate player of all time.
He was like the Opera for them for practically 2 years. That makes no sense. Yeah, like, it didn't make any sense. Like, the way the people they were picking up made no sense. They did feel like cheap moves, and then they finally got Safe, and they only, like, Safe was only on the team for half a year, and it's like, like, what are we talking about here? Like, you finally got an Opper and you didn't mold your system to try to fit him. You just wanted to play your old style, which wasn't working, by the way. And it was only working when your op was able to find it. Like, they didn't realize the good that they had when they had it. And they didn't realize, like, Furia is an org that it's almost just like the whoever is making the GMing decisions, I have to just imagine that they are under 25 years old, because it didn't seem like their frontal cortex was fully developed. They're making these grass is greener moves all the time, and they're trying to just like do big spendings off of blockbuster names like Fallen and Chelo when they aren't even thinking about role fit.
By the way, I'll even tell people a piece of context that might blow their mind, which is any time you ever mention Fallen costs a lot of money or why is he on a top team, you get the same like NPC reply. People just go, well, you have to understand for marketing, it's excellent because you sell a lot of like, merch and jersey, right? Fallen has his own store where he sells his own peripherals, including like rivals to your brand. So when you get sponsored by whatever, maybe, I don't know, Logitech or something, right? All that money that you want, so you want it to be like, Fallen use it. It's like he sells all the other mice on his shit. So that also doesn't quite actually even work like people think it does. I mean, I don't know specifically on Furia's case. He hasn't pissed me off enough to go digging. But I will tell you on Imperial, it was even more ridiculous. On Imperial, I heard he even had a clause in his contract where he could actually actively have a rival sponsor to Imperial, the team. Well, the logic of the whole point of being a star on a team is what you're selling is your likeness rights. You're set like when G2 pays Nico all that money, they're not actually paying because he's sick at headshotting. They're paying so that they can go, Nico uses this mouse and this headset, and hey, wow, look, what does Nico think about this new like SSD company we're with or this VPN we're using? Like, if he can then just go next day, like, and by the way, I'm Nico and I use the rivals VPN. It's like, well, we're not getting that fucking money anymore. And that suddenly that like high line fucking deal just isn't even there anymore. So that's why actually the saddest thing is, I remember we were doing a stream, Maui, and I was like, why did they sign him? And the saddest thing is, he, again, Launders, just a beaten man at this point in time, just goes probably just to be popular. And I was like, that is whack, but that is really the only reason. Like, you're right. I guess if you do sign the most popular Brazilian ever, like, it'll at least make fans initially be like, hey, maybe. Like, I hope it works out, No one's hating on Fallen. That's my job. I've sort of done that, and my lawyers will contact you soon. But I was thinking, you keep in crutch on my material. Although you're taking the Kai, to be fair, mainly, So it's all right. You can't join me, shall
Everyone gets a Brazilian player.
Skulls.
I was going to say though, like the Fallen thing is, the Fallen thing is interesting to me because if I was running an org and I spent 700,000, whatever, I would want all the marketing rights. That's exactly what I would be buying. I'd go, okay, so listen, I am the biggest Fallen fangirl. Everyone knows. I think I held up at the RMRs before the Rio Major. I made all the talent sit in a car for like 30 minutes so I could get a photo with him because I really believed that was the last time I was going to see him.
That's so egregious.
I was like, he's going to go to the major. He's going to retire in Rio. I'll never see him again. It's my favorite player. I've got to get all the photos. Like, I'm a huge fangirl, but I'm only getting Fallen on my team now if I can make money from his face and I can sell his name because I don't think he's going to ever be prime Fallen again, right? So if you're not even getting that, what is the point? What is the point of having the player there? If he can't perform on the team, you can't use him for any money and make money to buy other players. It's exactly what you're saying, Thorn. Popularity maybe the hope that what he can mold this younger generation. But if you're making as much money as you are, you don't really need to mold anything, right, Maui? I mean, you can just continue doing what you're doing and sort of blaming everyone else.
Like the GMing from in general, there's a couple angles here. Like the GMing from Furia is in such a weird state where it's like if you have KSCERATO, you shouldn't be 1 foot in with competitiveness, 1 foot in media and just being a fan favorite. Like the reason that Furia even got popular in the first place and took over as kind of the prime Brazilian team is because they were winning, or at least they were the winningest team of the region for quite some time. And now, well, MIBR is encroaching on that territory, and it doesn't matter if Fallen is a popular figure or anything like that. You will get views. Let's say that. Maybe the Gaules stream will get 100,000, 200,000 views because Fallen's on that roster still. But at the end of the day, that's putting money in Gaules' pocket. If MIBR are the ones that are actually going deeper in the tournaments, they're going to start converting people. They're going to start, people are very, it seems like, at least in that region, they're okay if it isn't actually like the one roster, like how Cloud9 fans will just follow Cloud9 almost whatever they do. It's more like for Brazilian fans, at least from my perspective, like they didn't hold out when SK got bought out LG. They didn't hold out and were like, nope, I'm gonna wait for that Luminosity roster. No, they just swapped on over because they're trying to root for the best Brazilian roster. Doesn't matter what assembly of players it is. They just want to root for their country. That's what El Tribo seems to be more about than anything. It's more about just the countrymen versus actually, is it my favorite player? No, it's just anybody from Brazil. And that's why if I insult Kai one day, insult Skulls another day, well, then people just think I hate the whole country instead of actually just looking at how they are as objective players.
Is that your streaming schedule? Is that what you have? Do you post it like Donna at the beginning of the week?
Yeah. Okay. I have it on a board actually off screen. Yeah.
By the way, I'll even give you one other angle that's another like internal within the team, canary in the coal mine, that something's really wrong, right? I actually noticed this back in 2020 before the world went online when me and Semler went and did Blast. And we had like one of those like things where I can't remember what they were called, but they used to have like a live stream that went before the Blast broadcast. It was kind of like a podcast, and it would be sort of like people could walk in and out who were players. And when me and Semler were there, they had Fallen come over because Fallen and Semler had like a tete-a-tete on Twitter where basically Fallen had said something like, oh, if they're not even like, if Fallen's too busy with business stuff and he's not practicing, like, what the hell, like, what you're a professional, you're supposed to be a top player. And then Fallen, even though their results were terrible in MIBR at the time, basically came over and was like, hey, just because the results are bad doesn't mean we aren't practicing. And so then famously, he made that mistake. He was then on live broadcast with me, so I just spun it to him and basically was like, well, then why? I said straight up, like, why are you shit then? Like, why are you guys just bad at the game? Like, that, he's actually giving you a bloody excuse there. You could just say, I'm really preoccupied with other things, set up my post-career, but instead what you've said is I'm putting in all the hours and we're just trash at the game. And then he basically had to say, this is real, you can go back and watch this, he just admitted like, yeah, well, actually I don't really know why we're bad. I've sort of like, he actually said for real that as an in-game leader he'd sort of lost his feel for the meta and what was going on in the scene at the time. And all I'll tell you is ever since then I've never seen him ever speak in interviews in a way that had confidence. It's always like this interview you're referencing now at Pro League. It's always sort of like, oh, and this is going wrong and we're going to need time, and we're working on things, it's difficult. And the reason why that is so disturbing is, even though I'll tell you there's a reason he's called Two-Faced Toledo, he's basically the best media guy probably ever from that region. Like, a lot of them are just their heart on their sleeve, they're just really out there. Things are going great, it's great. Like KSCERATO, if things are going badly, everyone's going to hate him because he's going to say all the things people don't like. The difference with this guy is he used to give off the perception on camera in LG and SK when they were the number one team of like, yeah, I'm a nice guy, I respect the opponents. I can tell you behind the scenes he was a killer. He's the guy who would be like laughing at me when I'd like picked FaZe to beat them or something and they would beat me. So he'd just be sort of like, well, get him next time, Thorin, or something, like if they were in the bar or something. And I used to think, fair play though, that is the swagger you want. You want the IGL to actually think like we're better than even the world rankings, or if you think some other we're going to beat them. That guy hasn't been there for privately or publicly for years now. So I actually do get the sense, it's not that he's mailing it, I think it's actually the best he can do. I think it's just, yeah, people also forget he's really old. Isn't he like 30, what's he now, 32 or something? I'm going to look it up, but he's got to be pretty old. Let's have a look now. 32 years old, literally. Right now, look, if he was a great in-game leader, totally fine. You got your Carragans, you got your Snappy. I will note none of them are AWPers. So I've always said, and it's always disturbed me, why are you still on the AWP, mate? Like, get off that. I don't even care that angle. Like, but I win the clutches, mate. Cadian's a great IGL and wins the clutches. If all you're doing is winning the odd clutch, but not IGL, well, then in that case, be the primary AWPer. We all know primary AWPer, he won't put the numbers up. So I think he's in a bad situation. And I will say, this is why it's on the GM, not Fallen. Because Fallen should want to be in the best team Fallen can be in, getting the most money Fallen can get, playing with the best players. Like Fallen should want this. I mean, look, depends if you can spin that angle of like he's supposed to be the godfather of Brazil, taking care of everyone. Like, I don't know about that angle, but I will say, I mean, to be fair, godfathers in the mafia are pretty ruthless. They'll sort of do anything they want to do, cut anyone's head off, put a horse's head next to someone. Could have gone with another joke there, but whatever. But I will just say, I'll put it on the GMs. They shouldn't have signed him. And if they do sign him, by the way, then make him a fucking ambassador or something. Or here's the obvious one. I don't know why they haven't tried this. I think this is the next one, Maui. Here's my prediction. The next one is he's just the coach. That's the obvious thing you do at this point. It's the only way to keep him, not seem like you're saying fuck Fallen and retiring him. And it's a way. Then if he has got any tactical nous left, then you bring him in and he's the coach, right? I don't know what other pivot there is at this point in time.
I felt like he should have been.
I can't see Fallen as a coach. I don't see that. I think that killer that you mentioned is, I just don't think that transitions to coach very well. That there is
enough about Taz. Oh, sorry, you talking about Fallen, my bad. Oh, shit, did I say that out loud? Oh, my God. Love you, legend.
That's amazing. I don't know. I don't see.
What do you think? Do you think he could be coach,
it.
Maui? Could he do it?
He doesn't understand the meta well enough to be the coach, so I don't think he should be. I don't like a coach.
By the way, if that's not true anymore, then talk some shit. Like, I'm fucking giving you the chance, mate. Just come out and say, what are you talking about, Thorin? I know the meta. Or what are you, some British ginger guy who thinks he knows? Go and tell me about winning, mate. Do that. That would be fucking gangster.
Well, if he admits it himself that he felt like that in 2020, I feel like the reason that it got a little bit weird for Furia is because he came in supposed to be as he was supposed to be the IGL. He couldn't really lead them as well as they had wanted. It didn't really improve them. In fact, I think it was actually detracting from their success. And then.
And dude, they abandoned it super quick. You remember, like, it was just like an interview art. Like, actually, I'm kind of IGL.
Yeah, no, our Art took it back.
It's only like 2 turnips or something.
Art took it back within like a couple months or something, if even that. And then
Feels
they just
like
moved on from that, and now he's the in-game leader again. And I actually, in a weird way, actually, I thought that the T-side calling from this ESL Pro League was actually okay, but I actually just think Kai was so bad. Like, basically, Kai was a traffic cone. Anywhere that they knew he was defaulting, teams were just running at him on both CT side or T side, and then they would just, that's the round. Like, you were basically playing 4v5 the entire time. It's not even like people would even joke to me like, oh, who's the worst fragger, Hooksy or Kai? And I'm like, dude, I would take Hooksy in a gunfight a million times before I would take Kai. Like, I unironically, like, I've seen Hooksy at least spray 3 people down when they're blind. Like, he can do it.
I can't believe we're comparing Hooksy as well. I know this is the standard we're setting here. It's like he's even like Hooksy. Also, there's some sort of a joke in there about Kai jelly or something like that. When he's involved in getting fucked. I don't know. So so there's something there.
He lived it up for everybody to fuck Furia. That's actually it.
Right, well, there you go then. There you go. There's the alley oop. He's done the window dog. All right then.
They were. I mean, so I don't know if actually I can really even. What's funny about it is, like, I love if I'm Fallen, I love the situation right now with Furia in that I think my contract is going to last a little bit longer, because how could anybody take the period that he's playing with Kai seriously when you're giving a guy the exact, like, not even bad positions. Like, he was lurking A on Mirage. You give so many star players that, like Frozen. I think Rops did it before at some point. Like, I mean, Electronic did it before at some point. Like, so many great all-time riflers got to lurk A on Mirage, and Kai's doing it, and he's just literally, they're just bulldozing over him. They're pushing him in Palace. They're pushing him in Ramp. They didn't even care. Like, so you can't even call strats if your A guy is just ass, and he was. So yeah, I don't even know where else to go from that. Like Fallen, it'd be cool to see. Like, I think what I really do want from Furia is and this is where I think they go next, is that I'm okay with chelo swapping roles. Like I actually, it basically what's cool about chelo right now is he's actually the most versatile rifler you can have for Furia, because you could either put him in some of his old positions, which were Art's old rifle positions, or you could keep him in these anchor positions, which he's not really thriving in, but at least he's like decently competent. Like I think he's got like basically a 1.00 rating with Furia ever, and like that's okay. Like you don't need him to be popping off in the way he was for Furia, but now you have this option. You could unlock chelo by putting him in those old spots that he had, which were Art spots that overlapped, or you could leave him in the anchor position, which he's okay at. And now with your Furia, you sign any rifler. You sign any rifler. If he's an anchor, he'll take chelo's spots that he's currently playing. If he's more of a forward aggressive player, he's going to just go 1-for-1 with Art spots. Like that's why I don't think even the roadmap to fixing Furia is that long or arduous, because all you need is a single replacement right now, and then we can talk about who's on the chopping block next if that doesn't work out.
The issue here, though, is that change going to happen? Because we can talk about how to fix Furia, but the whole conversation you've heard at Maui, it's all come back to the same problem, which is there just seems to be an issue in management. We heard Art break it down as well. And I mean, obviously, there's a little bit of a part of me that I always take that with a pinch of salt, because I believe there's always two sides to the story. But at the end of the day, some of the stuff he said was pretty hard hitting. I mean, is there an issue here with management? And then if that is the case, how the hell do you fix that?
I'll tell you one thing I think would actually be the instant kick up the arse that would mean they'd have to change something. I even think, by the way, if the aforementioned KSCERATO, depending on what happens with his contract, there's an obvious way he'd have to exit the team. So if they don't qualify to the next major, they're in deep shit. And remember, there is going to still be like a slot-based system or whatever, but it's not RMRs anymore as far as we know. It's some sort of thing based on like how you do throughout the season. And quite frankly, this team's pretty bad right now. Like, as it stands right now, I actually think there is a world where like the Pain Gamings, the Imperials, the MIBRs, there's also a pretty decent, because they haven't been able to talent drain, there's a pretty decent like sort of bunch of teams either breathing down their necks or who are arguably better, unless KSCERATO just plays like a top 5 rifler. So I actually think that would be a mega motivator, because then when you lose the millions as an org, I mean, at that point, either surely people leave or you have to do some sort of cut. I'll just say as well, the reason why, if people are wondering also why, if you've fallen, you're always going to have some angle. I had a joke like this way back in the day when Virtus Pro, the classic lineup that won the major and stayed together for like 5 years, until like, I think it was sometime in like 2018 or something, right? They used to be famously on the best contract in Counter-Strike. They not only were one of the first orgs to get like the $20,000 a month, but they had an insane clause in their contract that said, if anyone else becomes the best paid team, you automatically match them. I don't know if it lasted the whole 5 years, but that's what it used to be. So that was like basically like the ultimate contract to be on, because you can never get paid more money elsewhere. And my joke used to be, no wonder they would always find a way, no matter what slump they were in, to find a will. Yeah, but thing is though, we're going to be back in the lab, we're going to boot camp, because at that point, all you're basically saying is like, look, truth be told, I don't fucking know if we're ever going to be good again, but I'd like one more month of the salary. So it's like that meme of Vince Carter Maui, like, I got one more in me. That's like every month, no matter how bad it gets. You're like, basically the question is not like, should you retire? Should you leave and go to a different team? Are you good enough? The question is, do you want 20K again? It's like, you know what? I do. I actually would like another 20K. I feel like that's the position some of these players are probably in as well. So I think like right now, there's another thing. Like, surely eventually, if you don't qualify to the next major, surely eventually like a fallen becomes untenable as well. Like, does he even want to be on the team, by the way, if you're not famous and you're not in majors? Like that for real, even though it sounds fucked up, there are a lot of teams where I do think actually failing on the biggest stage, that sometimes is the best motivator to change things up.
If they don't...
Do you think they make the next major though? I mean, that's the question, because the problem with Furia right now for me is they're horribly bad, but sometimes they're not, and it's just enough to get them through, which is kind of, it allows them to skate a little bit.
Furia got bailed out by Imperial and Pain, making it as deep as they did in the most previous major, because now they have 7 slots for the Americas. So it's actually, unfortunately, much easier for Furia to skate on by and make it through. I imagine they'll still have an RMR because they haven't dissolved the partner leagues yet, and I would imagine that they would still roll out the RMRs for the upcoming major. And I feel like through the RMRs, it's difficult when people are in the server against a team like Furia, because God, dude, North American players and Brazilian players just choke when they play against Furia. Like, there's still that aura in the server where even if the tactical side and the overall game plan is stronger for Pain Gaming or MIBR or complexity. Somehow they always have a knack to losing to a 1v3 from KSCERATO, a 1v2 from Fallen, and then suddenly they just bottle the whole thing, and now Furia's in 3-0, and for like they didn't even play good CS until the very most clutch moments, which obviously, I mean, if you win like that, you do win like that. But I do feel like if they're, say, we're the 5 slots, I mean, if there were only 5 slots through the Americas right now, I'm taking complexity over them. I'm taking liquid over them. I'm taking MIBR over them. I'm taking pain over them. And then it's kind of like the race for the last slot is like, I mean, M80's performance in Pro League was flat out more impressive than Furia's was. Imperial didn't do really well here.
There's quite a few teams.
There's definitely teams in the mix. That's safe to say. Yeah, there's definitely teams in the mix that you would probably say they're at the level right now of Imperial. And how stupid does that sound? That Imperial, the meme team that was supposed to be a last dance, is now actually probably going to be in the 7th place decider game for who gets sticker money at the next RMR.
That is kind of crazy. I mean, so now if we look at KSCERATO, let's say that the contract is coming up. Because for me, it kind of feels I'm a bit sad about the fact that this is a player that's probably deserves to lift a big trophy, deserves to be celebrated in some way, and is probably going to end his career not being that and being forgotten as time goes on. Does he move if that contract is coming up? Let's say June, July is the time for changes. Do we see KSCERATO leave, Thorin? Do you think that Furia has that lineup change?
The big fear, obviously, is this angle, which I don't necessarily blame him because it has never worked thus far, having a big Brazilian name go to another team. Like coldzera was like pretty good in FaZe, but he wasn't coldzera from back in SK and LG. And obviously Fallen was like, I mean, the joke is now I'm talking about 3 years ago, like he wasn't good. Well, he's not good now, but he wasn't good in Team Liquid either. Like that also didn't work. In which team, you notice he also found a way to get as many checks as possible. He went from like, I'm just an AWPer to I'm the IGL now to like, well, maybe I'm an AWPer. It's like, give me a break, mate. So he extended that one out. The biggest problem I have is there's a statement I made about 2 years ago and everyone lost their minds. But I think actually the more you watch, you should realize, and what I said is right. It's sad, which is coldzera, I think, was really good for about almost 3 years. If you add in, he was actually pretty good before they got the super line. So let's say like approaching about 4 years, he was pretty good. Here's the thing. At his peak, he was a really well-rounded player, right? I think KSCERATO's peak is higher. He's a more skilled player. And KSCERATO now, unironically, has put together like 4+ years of being really good. His problem is, you all remember coldzera winning majors, and you remember him picking up trophies and MVP after MVP. This guy can't even win MVPs. He's not in the final. Like, so as a result, if you actually look at the body of work, if you turned off like who they're playing, you just watched the crosshair and the POVs, and you watched both side by side, aside from the fact you'd know from the style which one coldzera is, the better player would be KSCERATO. I actually think he is a better player historically now in terms of like ability and what he did in the server than coldzera. But notice the most depressing part about that is, one, it's never going to be acknowledged because he was never close to the accomplishments of coldzera. And then secondly, if coldzera only got 4 years and this guy's having like about 5 years now, that's getting really sad because how many more does he get? Does he even get to have like 8 years? If he does, by the way, then it's even worse because even if he wins like in a couple of years from now, he could have been like a top 10 player of all time. That's how good this guy is. Like, if people don't know, the only time he's dropped off literally was when he had like a family tragedy. I think like one of his like parents died or something, or was ill or something really crazy earlier this year. He had like one tournament after that he was bad, and right after that he was right back to the top again. And if you watch now, he absolutely, no matter how, this is the other thing, no matter how bad Furia gets, he can still somehow hit that peak level. And I do think for real, if you go and look at the stats especially, this is easily like a top 5 rifler over the last half a decade. But again, no trophies, not even a silly little blast or something, just nothing, just no trophies at all. That's just depressing.
KSCERATO should be in the conversation for the best Brazilian player of all time based off of individual form and longevity in that sort of form. And also the thing is that it's pretty much, if you really kind of eye test wise went coldzera for KSCERATO, if KSCERATO were born or were on a professional team 4 years prior, if it were KSCERATO in coldzera's positions, it's hard to know how he would do under all of the immense pressure in those moments at those huge stages. But in terms of pure skill and what he's doing today, like one for one, it's such a slam dunk in terms of just how he would fit into those roles and positions. So it's just a shame because they're just not putting the people around him, the personnel that he needs in order to succeed, because it really should be who is the Brazilian GOAT 1A, 1B, coldzera, KSCERATO. It's just not even a convo. It's just, unfortunately, just because he hasn't gone deep enough in enough tournaments, it's just not a it's a non-starter.
So a little bit of a question from left field, though. So if we take a look, I mean, I also think that it's important to preface this by saying that everyone is getting this worked up about Furia because there were expectations on them, because there was a time where this team was meant to be the best of Brazil and to showcase to the world what was happening. And do you think if COVID and lockdown hadn't happened, that 2019 Furia moving into 2020, I feel like the story we would be saying right now would just be so different. And maybe that freedom to be on LAN and to play, possibly a very different conversation happening now?
I mean, like I say, I do think that was the best lineup they ever had, because the difference is that was, like Maui said, look, it was online, but it still wasn't Yuri's best year. Like, that's all we had to go. By the way, when everyone says that, because everyone does say that, like, oh, players, Manto was just good online and that. What about Big Clan and Heroic? It's like, motherfucker, you're telling me Z was like the GOAT based on online shit? Like, shut the fuck up. Which is it? Is online play count or not? Like, I don't think it counts. But in this scenario, that was when Yuri was peaking. He was obviously like in his second year at the top level. KSCERATO was already really good. Henny was good. The point is, that would have been the best chance. And also, if at least you get the ball rolling there, like you get the results, you get all the performances, then anything's possible. Like, that could change the whole course of history. So, yeah, that's definitely one of the big bombers, is that they had that sort of period where they were stuck in North America and they could only play what was a gradually dying out scene of, like, eventually by the end it was like 3 good teams, like, and you just kept beating them up over and over and over again. And yet also, people don't understand, that makes like the game stale, because you need to, in Europe you play like 15 good teams, so you're always playing this style, this guy has a star player over here, they're good on this map. So I think that also will like degrade what you do. And actually, one last thing, we didn't even mention that much here, but the other thing that's so criminal about the window that they let go of, the window when Yuri was still really good with KSCERATO and you had Henny and Art was super effective, is simultaneously, this is the reason I think Gary didn't get fired years ago, despite all that coach bug thing where he couldn't even attend like 3 majors or something. It's because they used to absolutely pioneer like smokes in the meta or like setups and stuff. And they would have things that, look, yes, other teams could take and they'd use just as well sometimes, but they would come with things where they clearly were working on it and they would actually have some like very clever angles and stuff. But again, it never converted into a championship. You think of some of the other teams that innovated in the game, they turn that into like a tournament, or you have them on map you're unbeatable on, or you have like a 3-month span where you win a couple of trophies or you beat your main rival. All they would do is they would go do all this homework and then everyone else would just go, oh yeah, I think it's C. The answer is C. And then everyone else just had it and it didn't even do anything for them.
I mean, the big stage performance that really put Furia on the map for a lot of people was them beating Astralis on Nuke. I think it was ECS season, I want to say 7? Okay, ECS season 7.
I saved you, but it's all good. It's all good.
I was going to say 6. I was going to say 6. Yeah, but it's okay. Yeah, okay. So ECS season 7, when they beat Astralis and also famously beating them on Nuke, I mean, they were just like doing all these kind of ridiculous plays. And I think the hallmark thing about Furia back then is that they actually didn't really go outside on Nuke on their T side. They just played lobby and ramp almost entirely. And so their tactics were just something that people just really weren't ready for. And if you knew that now, then, or whatever, like, you would probably play your defense completely differently. But that's why they were a fun team. That's why people like Launders really started to love them, because they played so off meta. And I like off meta teams too, but there's a limit to my love. Like, I like what efficiencies. I like VP type level of efficiencies. I like when it's like, okay, you really just like boiled the game down to its fundamentals and you are just like min-maxing every single aspect you possibly can, which is like why you're hard to play against. But Furia is just like the complete, they basically came into the game with a philosophy that was so out of left field. It was like, did you land from an alien planet where time is like such a valuable resource that you have to end rounds within 30 seconds every single time? It's like they played a completely different, it's like they came from that, like, what was that rush down, like that mode where you're supposed to rush all the time, where you're just trying to get the most rounds in possible, like that old, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like where it's like you play 20-minute halves and it's like as soon as the round ends, chargers only. It's like they came from a chargers only meta where it's like, okay, our gimmick needs to happen in the first 15 seconds. And then if it doesn't, we're just going to throw the rest of the round. Who cares? We're just going to go on to the next one. So it was cool to watch that. Like, it's actually funny if they actually ran that mode today. Would Furia actually, Would
That
they
would be fire. Oh, it would
yeah,
be
they
amazing.
have
Yeah,
legs
exactly.
there, like, you know, but in terms of like European CS, especially once Valve increased the amount of round time to 155 instead of 145, I feel like that's not what coincided with Furia's failures, but it probably would have helped them if that was still the meta.
So final question now, gents. I mean, and it's a question that we'll put to the chat afterwards, but can Furia be saved, Maui?
They have to just pull the trigger on a rifle move. They just have to pull the trigger on a big rifle move, the slam dunk move. If they want to make a big splash and show to Brazilian fans we're the top dog, it's Insani. Insani is without a doubt the #1 replacement for Art. That would you'd still have an in-game leader Opper in Fallen. You'd have Chelo still playing the anchor roles and KSCERATO on the other side of the map. You'd have Yuri in some of the flex rotator positions along with Insani, and then you would have the most natural born and bred entry fragger replacement who is popping off the charts with practically donk level numbers in the tier 1.5 space and can speak Portuguese, and that's Insani. But if you're going to go down the line a little bit, there are a couple people on some of the other teams. I wouldn't love a move like getting Phelps back, because I feel like why are we reuniting Phelps and Fallen in 2024? That just feels like it's a little far down the line. But like you could go for someone also off of Imperial, like Decenty or No Way. You could go. I think maybe you'd even consider poaching someone like Exit from MIBR also. But by and large, if you want to show that you mean business, you're getting rid of Kai. It's the stand-in. It's over. It's over. The experiment has to end now, or I am just so done with watching this team. I'm so done with even talking about this team, because it's just going to be the same thing on repeat forever. I can't blame anybody except for Kai for being terrible, and then I'm just also simultaneously blaming the management for putting Kai into this position. So just give me a good signing, give me a big blockbuster name, give me Insani, and then Fury is saved.
Thorin, how about you? Feel the same way?
Look, the one thing they have going for them, assuming they retain his talents, is if you have KSCERATO, in theory, I assume everyone, if you have the money, would want to play with him who is Brazilian. He's just that good. So that is like a massive, massive thing that you've got to maintain. Like that, it's not even like there's a list. That's just the only thing on the blackboard. It's like we must keep KSCERATO by whatever dark arts we referenced earlier that they're able to keep him in the first place. Like, and as far as I can tell, they just like it's like he goes and they go, tell you what, you can go. You know what? You've earned your chance. If you want to go elsewhere, KSCERATO, that's fine. All I'd just like to say is here's a silver watch for all your services here. Now, if you could just pay attention to it. You're not leaving, are you? No, it's a family in this team, isn't it? So you're going to stay, aren't you? So anyway, basically, sit back down again. You're fired. So what? Like, so I still think it is possible to fix. You know, the saddest thing of all, if it wasn't for the fact he did the tell-all, I'm actually glad he did the tell-all, because I was so scared that this was like the bait and switch, Maui. That's like essentially like they give us like fucking Kai, so we're like, oh, even Art was better than this. He's like, and Art's back, he's coming back. That would be the nightmare. So I have to say, I actually think even with KSCERATO, you can't save them in the sense you can't make a team good enough for him, and it just doesn't seem like you want to spend. So I think you go the other way. I think what you do is this. I think now you sign Cold Zera from Red Canids, you bring him in. You sign Taco from wherever the fuck Taco, I think God sent us, I don't know. You bring Taco in, you bring in, I don't know, you keep going, FNX probably still around the scene. You bring him in, and then what you do is, then you sell KSCERATO, and then you just take that team and you just call it like a fucking retirement squad, and it plays just show matches. And then you have a professional Furia show match team. You'll be at all the majors, every event in Brazil. You can be there on the finals day. You can never be in the final anymore as a real team, but you can be there on the finals day. You can play against Astralis, or when they don't feel like playing, just Cadian and whoever else from Denmark turns up to save the major. Fuck Astralis. That's a little piece of inside baseball there for people who don't know. And at that point in time, you won't have saved Furia, but in terms of the spirit of Furia, since KSCERATO is Furia, you will have saved KSCERATO, and that's what matters.
And think of all the photos I could take every time I'm at an event with all of those heroes. On that note, let us know how you think Furia could potentially be saved in the comments, and hopefully we'll be back soon for a whole nother episode of Feed the Trolls.